The rain hammered against the kitchen window like accusatory fingers, each drop a reminder of how small I'd become. My hands trembled as I wiped down the same counter for the third time, the chemical smell of bleach burning my nostrils, mixing with the stale coffee scent that never quite left this place. Maria's diner, 24-hour shifts that bled into each other, tips that barely covered the bus fare home, and a uniform that smelled perpetually of grease no matter how many times I washed it. I was invisible here, a ghost in a stained apron, refilling cups for truckers who never looked up from their phones, cleaning tables where families laughed about futures I couldn't afford to dream about anymore. 26 years old, and this was it. This was all there was. The bell above the door chimed, another customer I'd serve with a smile I didn't feel. But when I turned, the words died in my throat. He stood in the doorway, rain sliding off a black coat that probably cost more than I made in a year. Water droplets caught in dark hair styled with deliberate carelessness. And even from across the room, I could smell it. Cedar and something darker, expensive, dangerous. Behind him, two men in suits flanked the entrance, their eyes scanning the diner with mechanical precision, hands resting near their jackets in a way that made my stomach tighten. Everyone else seemed frozen. Maria stopped mid-pour. The trucker at table 6 put down his fork. The man's gaze swept the room and landed on me. My breath caught. Eyes like black ice assessed me in a single glance, not the way men usually looked at waitresses, searching for something to take. This was different. Clinical. Evaluating. As if he could see every failure, every humiliation, every night I'd cried myself to sleep in that moldy apartment I shared with 3 other girls. He moved forward, and the diner seemed to shrink around him. His shoes, polished leather that clicked against the linoleum, stopped at the counter. Up close, he was younger than I'd thought. Maybe 30. Sharp jawline, a small scar near his left eyebrow, and a presence that made the air feel heavier. "Coffee," he said. His voice was quiet, controlled, but it carried weight. An accent I couldn't quite place. European, maybe Italian. Black. My hand shook as I reached for the pot. "Don't spill it, don't spill it, don't..." "You're nervous," not a question, an observation. "I'm fine." The lie tasted bitter. I poured, managed not to make a fool of myself, and set the cup down. His fingers, long, elegant, a silver ring on his right hand, wrapped around it, and I noticed the scarring on his knuckles. Fighter's hands dressed in gentleman's skin. "What's your name?" Standard question. I'd answered it 1,000 times, but something about the way he asked made it feel like a confession. "Emma." "Emma." He repeated it slowly, as if testing how it felt in his mouth. "You work here often?" "Every day." I tried to smile. Failed. "Double shifts, mostly." His eyes narrowed slightly. "That's exhausting." "It's life." Behind him, one of his men whispered something urgent. The man at the counter, because I couldn't keep thinking of him as just the customer, raised a hand without looking back. Instant silence. "How much do you make?" he asked. Heat flooded my cheeks. That's not really... Humor me. Something in his tone suggested I didn't actually have a choice. With tips? Maybe $2,000 a month, on a good month. He didn't react. Didn't laugh. Didn't look surprised. Didn't offer false sympathy. He just watched me with those unreadable eyes, and I felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with my worn uniform or the hole in my shoe I'd tried to hide with black marker. "Is that enough?" he asked. "It has to be." That's not an answer. My throat tightened. Behind me, Maria was pretending to organize menus, but I could feel her attention locked on this conversation. The other customers had returned to their meals, but the air still felt charged, electric. "No," I whispered. "It's never enough." He set down his cup, reached into his coat. For one terrifying second, I thought. But he pulled out a wallet, thick, black leather that looked soft as silk. He extracted several bills and placed them on the counter. $500, just sitting there, between the sugar packets and the ketchup bottles. "That's too much," I said automatically. "For the coffee," he replied. "And for your honesty. I can't accept..." You can. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and stood. I have to go. Wait. Your change. Keep it. He was already moving toward the door, his guards falling into formation around him. But at the threshold, he paused and looked back at me. Emma. The way he said my name made something in my chest crack open. Yes. Be careful walking home tonight. The rain makes people drive carelessly. Then he was gone, disappearing into a black SUV with tinted windows that pulled away from the curb like a panther sliding into darkness. Maria materialized beside me, staring at the money. Do you know who that was? No. That was Dante Moretti. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They say he owns half the city, the dangerous half. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. He was just a customer. Honey. Maria's weathered hand covered mine. Men like that don't just stop at places like this, and they definitely don't leave $500 tips. The money sat there, accusatory and tempting. I should give it back. Should find him somehow, return it, forget this ever happened. Instead, I folded it into my apron pocket, where it burned against my hip for the rest of my shift. The apartment was dark when I finally made it home at 2 a.m. My roommates were asleep, and I was grateful. I didn't want to explain the money, didn't want to talk about the man with the dangerous eyes and the quiet voice that had somehow stripped me bare with 3 minutes of conversation. I peeled off my uniform and stood under the shower's lukewarm spray, trying to wash away the feeling that something had shifted, that the careful, painful balance I'd maintained, the one that kept me functioning, kept me breathing through each identical day, had been disturbed. Dante Moretti. The name felt dangerous even in my thoughts. I thought about his question, how much do you make? I thought about the answer I should have given. More than I deserve, less than I need, and none of your business. Instead, I'd told him the truth, and he'd paid me $500 for it. My phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. Unknown number. You made it home safely. Good. My heart stopped, then kicked into overdrive. Who is this? The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Someone who wanted to make sure you didn't get hit by a careless driver. I stared at the screen, water dripping from my hair onto the glass. This was impossible. I hadn't given him my number, hadn't given him anything except my name and my failure, and how did you get my number? Does it matter? My hands shook. This should terrify me. This should send me running to, where? The police? And say what? A man tipped me generously and texted to make sure I got home safely? But Maria's words echoed. Men like that don't just stop at places like this. Yes, it matters. Fair enough. I asked your boss. She was surprisingly cooperative. Of course she was. Maria would give Dante Moretti anything he wanted if he so much as looked at her sideways. This is inappropriate. Yes. The simple acknowledgement should have reassured me. Instead, it made my pulse race faster. Then why are you texting me? The dots again. Longer this time. Because I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at that money, like it was both salvation and sin. Because most people lie when asked uncomfortable questions, but you told me the truth. Because... The message cut off. A full minute passed. Because? I typed before I could stop myself. Because you're going to change everything, Emma. And I don't think either of us is ready for that. My phone slipped from my hands, clattering into the sink. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was the most alive I'd felt in 3 years. I should have blocked the number, should have told Maria to never give out my information again, should have forgotten about cedar-scented cologne and black ice eyes and the way my name sounded in that quiet, controlled voice. Instead, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, reading his messages over and over until the words blurred. You're going to change everything. What did that even mean? My phone buzzed again. Sleep well, Emma. I typed and deleted 5 different responses before finally settling on. You too. The dots appeared immediately. I don't sleep well. Haven't in years. But thank you for the sentiment. Something about that admission, that tiny crack in his careful control, made my chest ache. Why not? I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Maybe he wasn't going to answer. Maybe he'd realized this whole thing was because men in my position don't have the luxury of unconsciousness. Too many people would prefer us permanently asleep. The casual way he referenced his own mortality should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself typing. That sounds lonely. It is. 2 words. But they carried the weight of confession, of something he probably never admitted to anyone. I should let you rest, he added. You have another double shift tomorrow. How did he know that? How do you know that? I know many things, Emma. Your schedule is the least interesting of them. And the most interesting? I regretted the question immediately. Too forward. Too flirtatious. We weren't the way you bite your bottom lip when you're nervous. The fact that you have a small scar above your right eyebrow. That you take your coffee with 2 sugars and never remember to eat during your shifts. That you're wearing blue pajamas right now with small white stars on them. The phone clattered onto my nightstand. I bolted upright, heart hammering, and ran to the window. The street below was empty except for a black SUV parked 3 buildings down. As I watched, the back window rolled down just enough for me to see him. Even at this distance, even in the darkness, I recognized the silhouette. Dante Moretti was watching my apartment. And instead of calling the police, instead of screaming, instead of doing any of the rational things a sane person would do, I raised my hand and waved. The window rolled up. The SUV pulled away. My phone buzzed one last time. Sleep well, little star. I'll see you tomorrow. I should have been terrified. I should have packed a bag and run. Instead, I climbed back into bed, clutched my phone to my chest, and fell asleep with a smile I couldn't explain, dreaming of dangerous men and impossible futures and the way it felt to finally be seen. The morning arrived with cruel brightness, sunlight cutting through the thin curtains like an interrogation lamp. I woke with my phone still clutched in my hand, the screen dark but heavy with the weight of last night's messages. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow was now today. My stomach twisted into knots as I dressed for my shift. The same stained uniform, the same worn shoes, the same routine I'd performed 1,000 times. But everything felt different. The fabric against my skin felt more real. The cool air from the broken heater felt sharper. Even the taste of cheap instant coffee seemed more vivid, as if someone had turned up the saturation on my gray existence. Maria was already at the diner when I arrived, her eyes finding mine the moment I walked through the door. She didn't say anything, but her expression spoke volumes. Be careful. Too late for that. The morning shift crawled by with agonizing slowness. Every time the bell chimed, my head snapped up. Every dark-haired customer made my pulse spike. But Dante Moretti didn't appear. By noon, I'd convinced myself last night was a fever dream. Rich men didn't text waitresses. They didn't park outside apartment buildings to watch windows. They didn't send cryptic messages about changing everything. I was wiping down table 9 when my phone buzzed. Look outside. My hands froze mid-wipe. Through the diner's grimy window, I could see it. The black SUV parked directly across the street, not hiding, not pretending. Just there. I can't leave my shift, I typed back, fingers clumsy with adrenaline. I know. I'll wait. For how long? As long as it takes. Maria appeared at my elbow, coffee pot in hand, staring at the vehicle. He's back. I see that. Emma. Her voice carried a warning I'd never heard before. Men like Dante Moretti don't wait for anyone. If he's waiting for you, what? She touched my shoulder, her grip surprisingly strong. It means you're already in deeper than you think. My shift ended at 6. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and bruised purple. I changed out of my uniform in the staff bathroom, suddenly self-conscious about my worn jeans and faded jacket. My reflection showed a girl who looked tired, underfed, and completely unprepared for whatever was about to happen. The SUV was still there. I stepped outside, and immediately the back door opened. Not Dante, one of his guards, the taller one from yesterday. His face was impassive as he gestured toward the interior. Miss Emma, Mr. Moretti requests your company. Requests. As if I had a choice. But I did, didn't I? I could turn around, walk to the bus stop, go home to my moldy apartment and my lukewarm shower, and my life of invisible poverty. Or I could step into that SUV and let whatever this was consume me. I stepped inside. The interior smelled like leather and that cedar scent I'd been unable to forget. Dante sat on the far side, phone in hand, but he looked up the moment I settled into the seat. Today he wore charcoal gray, suit perfectly tailored, white shirt open at the collar, and that same silver ring catching the dying light. The door closed. We were alone as two people could be with two armed men in the front seats, and the weight of his attention pressing against my skin. "You came," he said. "You didn't give me much choice. You always have a choice, Emma." His eyes held mine. "You could have walked away, could I?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Probably not." The SUV began moving, gliding through traffic with the confidence of a vehicle that knew it owned these streets. I should ask where we were going, should demand he take me home, should do 100 things that a smart woman would do. Instead, I asked, "Why were you watching my apartment?" "To make sure you were safe." "From what?" "From everything." He set his phone aside, giving me his full attention. "This city is dangerous, Emma. Especially for someone like you." "Someone like me?" "Someone without protection." The word hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. "I don't need protection," I said, but even I could hear how hollow it sounded. "Everyone needs protection." He leaned forward slightly, and I caught the full force of that cedar scent mixed with something warmer. Amber, maybe, or vanilla. The question is whether they're willing to accept it. And what would accepting protection from you cost? Smart question. He studied me with those black ice eyes. Most people don't think to ask. I'm not most people. No. His gaze traveled over my face, lingering on details I'd never thought worth noticing. The freckle near my left ear, the way my hair never quite cooperated, the perpetual tiredness that lived in the hollows beneath my eyes. "You're definitely not." The SUV turned onto a tree-lined street I'd never seen before. The buildings here were different, old brick converted into expensive lofts, wrought iron gates, actual trees growing from sidewalk cutouts. This was the part of the city I'd only glimpsed from bus windows, the world where people lived instead of merely survived. We stopped in front of a restaurant I'd seen featured in magazines left behind by diner customers. La Stella, 5-star reviews, 3-month waiting lists, prices that made my monthly salary look like pocket change. "What are we doing here?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Having dinner." Dante exited the vehicle, and after a moment of paralysis, I followed. The evening air was cooler here, cleaner somehow, no smell of exhaust or rotting garbage or desperate humanity. Just the scent of jasmine from window boxes and expensive perfumes and possibilities I'd never allowed myself to imagine. Dante's hand settled on the small of my back. Proprietary, protective. A brand through the thin fabric of my jacket. His guards flanked us as we approached the entrance, and I realized with sudden clarity that this was how he moved through the world, surrounded by weapons disguised as men, claiming space with his mere presence. The maitre d' spotted us and went pale. "Mr. Moretti, we weren't expecting—" "Table for 2, private, of course, immediately, right this way." We were ushered through the restaurant like royalty, past tables where wealthy couples paused mid-conversation to stare. I felt their eyes cataloging my cheap clothes, my unchained hair, my complete lack of sophistication. Heat crawled up my neck. Dante's hand pressed firmer against my back. "Ignore them. They're all looking. Let them look." His voice dropped lower, meant only for me. "Let them wonder what you have that their designer dresses and plastic smiles never could." "And what's that?" He held my gaze as the maitre d' opened a door to a private room. All soft lighting and elegant table settings and windows overlooking the city lights. My complete attention. The private room felt like a different universe. Crystal chandeliers cast patterns across white tablecloths, classical music played softly from hidden speakers, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below us like scattered diamonds. I'd never been anywhere like this. Dante pulled out my chair, an old-world gesture that felt natural on him, and I sat, hyper-aware of my worn jeans against the velvet cushion. "I don't belong here," I whispered. "You belong wherever I say you belong." He settled across from me, and even sitting, he radiated that careful control. And tonight, you belong here. A waiter appeared with menus leather-bound and heavy as books. I stared at the prices and felt my throat close. One appetizer cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "Order whatever you want," Dante said. "I can't, Emma." He reached across the table, his scarred fingers wrapping around my wrist. Not tight, not painful, but absolutely unmistakable. "For tonight, money doesn't exist. Want doesn't have a price tag. Order whatever makes you happy. Nothing here will make me happy." His thumb traced the inside of my wrist, finding my racing pulse. Then what would? The question was so genuine, so devoid of mockery, that I found myself answering honestly. Answers. Ask. Why me? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. You could have anyone. Women who know how to dress, how to talk, how to exist in places like this. So why a waitress from a 24-hour diner? He released my wrist but held my gaze. "Do you know what I do, Emma? Maria said you own half the city." Maria's being conservative. He leaned back, and for the first time, I saw something that might have been weariness in those carefully controlled features. I own businesses, properties, people. I make decisions that affect thousands of lives. I'm surrounded every day by individuals who tell me what they think I want to hear, who perform elaborate dances of deception and flattery. That sounds exhausting. It is. He paused as the waiter returned, and without consulting the menu, he ordered in fluent Italian, a language that sounded like silk and shadows in his mouth. When the waiter disappeared, Dante continued, 3 nights ago, I had dinner with a woman who'd spent 6 hours preparing. Designer dress, professional hair and makeup, rehearsed conversation topics. She laughed at my jokes, agreed with my opinions, and never once said anything real. And yesterday you told me you make $2,000 a month and it's never enough. His smile was small but genuine. You looked at $500 like it was salvation and sin. You didn't pretend to be something you're not. You were just honest. Honesty is cheap. Honesty is the rarest commodity in my world, Emma. Worth more than diamonds, more reliable than gold. He studied me with an intensity that made my skin feel too tight. You have no idea how valuable that makes you. The waiter returned with wine. Red, expensive, probably worth more than my rent. Dante poured, his movements economical and elegant. I still don't understand, I said, accepting the glass with trembling hands. You will. He raised his own glass. To new beginnings. I clinked my glass against his, and the crystal rang like a bell, like a warning. The wine tasted like dark cherries and something smoother, richer. I'd never had wine that didn't come from a box. Tell me about yourself, Dante said. There's nothing to tell. Everyone has a story. Mine's boring. I took another sip, feeling the alcohol warm my chest. Small town girl comes to big city, discovers she has no marketable skills, ends up serving coffee to truckers for the rest of her life. The end. That's not the end, isn't it? Not anymore. He set down his glass, and something in his expression shifted, became harder, more focused. What if I told you that you never have to go back to that diner? My heart stopped. What? What if I told you that starting tomorrow, you're under my protection, that you'll want for nothing, fear nothing, struggle for nothing? I'd ask what you want in return, smart girl. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I want your honesty, your company, your complete trust. That's all? For now. The way he said it made something in my stomach twist. This wasn't a simple offer. This was a transaction, a contract written in invisible ink, binding me to something I couldn't fully comprehend. And if I say no, then I take you home. We forget this conversation, and you go back to your double shifts. He leaned forward, and the candlelight carved shadows across his face. But we both know you won't say no. Why? Because you felt it yesterday, the same thing I felt. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Recognition. The word hit me like a physical blow, because he was right. From the moment he'd walked into that diner, something had shifted in my chest. Some fundamental rearrangement of the universe that I couldn't explain or deny. This is insane, I breathed. Yes. I don't even know you. You will. You could be dangerous. I am dangerous. He said it so matter-of-factly that I almost laughed. I'm the most dangerous man you'll ever meet, Emma. But not to you. Never to you. The food arrived. Plates of things I couldn't identify, artfully arranged and smelling divine. Dante watched me instead of eating, his attention unwavering. Eat, he commanded softly. I obeyed, and the first bite exploded across my tongue. Flavors I'd never experienced, textures that made my eyes close involuntarily. When I looked up, Dante was smiling. Good? I don't have words. You don't need them. He finally began eating, but his gaze kept returning to me. Your expressions say everything. We ate in silence for several minutes, and gradually, impossibly, I began to relax. The wine helped. So did the food. But mostly it was Dante himself. The way he didn't push, didn't demand, just existed across from me with patient intensity. Can I ask you something? I ventured. Anything. Last night you said you don't sleep well. Yes, why tell me that? He set down his fork, considering the question with the same seriousness he seemed to give everything. Because you asked, and because... He paused, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across his features. Because I wanted you to know I'm not invincible. That beneath the suits and the guards and the control, I'm just a man who hasn't had a full night's rest in 6 years. What happened 6 years ago? His jaw tightened. I became responsible for more lives than just my own. Before I could press further, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and typed something quickly. Then another message. His expression darkened. Problem? I asked. Always. He pocketed the phone. But nothing that can't wait. Are you sure? I don't want to... Emma. He reached across the table again, this time taking my hand properly. His palm was warm, the calluses on his fingers rough against my softer skin. When I'm with you, everything else waits. Understand? I nodded, not trusting my voice. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, and I watched, mesmerized, as this man who commanded fear and respect with equal ease performed this small, gentle gesture. I should scare you, he said quietly. You do. But you're still here. I don't know why. Yes, you do. His eyes found mine. You're here because you're tired of being invisible. Because you want someone to see you, really see you, and not just look through you like everyone else does. Tears burned behind my eyes. How did he know? How could he possibly know exactly what it felt like to move through the world as a ghost? I see you, Emma, he continued, his voice dropping to that whisper-soft tone that somehow carried more weight than shouting. Every scar, every fear, every dream you've buried because they hurt too much to hope for. I see all of it. Stop, I managed. Why? Because you're making me believe impossible things. What if they're not impossible? He stood, pulling me gently to my feet. What if everything you've ever wanted is standing right here, offering you his hand? We stood there, inches apart, his hand still holding mine. Through the windows, the city glittered. 1,000 lives playing out in those lit windows, none of them aware that in this private room, the trajectory of my entire existence was tilting on its axis. Come home with me, Dante said. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation, a question wrapped in certainty. I don't. Not for that. His free hand came up, fingertips grazing my cheek with devastating gentleness, just to talk, to let me show you what I'm offering, and if tomorrow morning you want to walk away, I'll take you anywhere you want to go. No strings, no obligations. You're lying. Probably. The corner of his mouth quirked. But don't you want to find out for sure? Every rational cell in my body screamed to refuse, to walk away from this beautiful, dangerous man and his impossible offers. But I was so tired of being rational, so exhausted from years of careful choices that had led nowhere, so desperate for someone, anyone, to look at me the way Dante Moretti was looking at me right now, like I mattered, like I was worth the wait, like I was his salvation instead of his sin. Okay, I whispered. His smile transformed his entire face, and for one moment, I saw past the control and the danger to something younger, more vulnerable. Okay, he echoed. And as he led me from the restaurant, his hand never leaving mine, I realized with crystal clarity that I'd just stepped off a cliff. I could only hope he'd catch me before I hit the ground. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building I'd only ever seen from street level, craning my neck to glimpse its peak. Now I stood inside it, and the scale felt wrong. Too much space, too much luxury, too much of everything I'd spent years convincing myself didn't matter. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the main living area, offering a panoramic view of the city that made my breath catch. The furniture was all clean lines and expensive fabrics, dark woods and leather that probably cost more per square inch than my entire wardrobe. Abstract art hung on walls painted in shades of charcoal and cream. Everything was pristine, controlled, perfect. It felt exactly like Dante. "Drink?" he asked, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over a chair with careless elegance. "Water is fine." He moved to a bar that could have serviced a small restaurant, and I watched the way he moved, economical, precise, aware of every inch of space around him. Even here, in what should have been his sanctuary, he carried that coiled tension. I wandered to the windows, pressing my palm against the cool glass. From this height, the city looked different, cleaner, the grime and desperation invisible from this altitude replaced by twinkling lights and geometric beauty. "It's not real," Dante said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of water. "The view, I mean. Up here, everything looks peaceful, organized, but we both know what's really down there. Chaos. Survival." He handed me the water, our fingers brushing. People doing whatever they must to make it through another day. Like me. Like you used to. His reflection in the glass studied mine. "That can change tonight if you want it to." I turned to face him properly. "Why do you keep saying that? What exactly are you offering, Dante?" He set his glass down on a nearby table and faced me fully, hands in his pockets. A deceptively casual stance that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "Protection, security, everything you need." He paused. "In exchange for your presence in my life." "As what? A mistress? A trophy?" "As my wife." The water glass slipped from my fingers. Dante caught it before it hit the floor, his reflexes inhumanly fast, and set it safely aside. When he straightened, his expression was unreadable. "That's insane," I managed. "Is it?" "Yes. We met yesterday." "Yesterday, Dante. People don't... You can't just... I can do whatever I want, Emma." He said it without arrogance, just stating a fact. "And what I want is you. You don't even know me. I know enough." He moved closer, not touching but invading my space in a way that made my pulse skitter. "I know you're honest in a world of liars. I know you're strong enough to survive on $2,000 a month without losing yourself. I know you bite your lip when you're nervous and you haven't had a decent night's sleep in longer than you can remember. That's not knowing someone. Then let me finish." His voice dropped lower, intimate. "I know your favorite color is blue because you always choose the blue pens at the diner when you take orders. I know you're left-handed, but you've trained yourself to serve with your right because it's easier. I know you have a small birthmark on your left wrist that you cover with your watch. I know you're terrified right now, but you're still standing here, which means you're braver than you think." Each observation hit like a physical touch. "How do you know all that? I've been watching you for 3 weeks, Emma." The admission should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver down my spine. Something darker, more complicated. 3 weeks? Since the first time I stopped at that diner for coffee. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "You smiled at a trucker who'd been rude to you all morning, even gave him extra sugar packets without charging him, and I thought, she's either a saint or a fool. Which am I?" "Neither." His fingertips traced the curve of my jaw. "You're a survivor with a soft heart, which is the rarest combination of all. And I decided right then that I couldn't let the world break you." "So you decided to own me instead?" "No." His hand dropped, and I immediately missed the contact. "I decided to offer you a choice. Continue as you are, struggling, exhausted, invisible, or marry me and never worry about money, safety, or being unseen again. And what do you get out of this? You. Simple, direct, devastating. Your honesty, your company, your trust. You said that at dinner, but there has to be more. He studied me for a long moment, then moved to the windows, staring out at his kingdom. In my world, Emma, family is everything. Loyalty is currency, and weaknesses are weapons. He turned back to me. I'm 32 years old. Every man in my organization expects me to marry, to produce heirs, to solidify my legacy. They've paraded suitable candidates before me for years, daughters of associates, women from respected families, alliances that would strengthen my position. And you want me instead? I want someone who chose me, not my name, or my money, or my power. His jaw tightened. Someone who'll be honest when everyone else is lying. Someone who'll remind me what matters when I'm drowning in blood and politics. That's a lot of pressure. Yes. What if I disappoint you? Impossible. He crossed back to me, and this time when he touched my face, both hands cupped my cheeks, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. You couldn't disappoint me if you tried, little star. The nickname from last night's text message made something in my chest crack open. Don't call me that. Why not? Because it makes this feel real. It is real. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. This is the most real thing I've felt in years. I should step back, should create distance, should do anything except stand here, letting this dangerous man touch me like I was something precious. I need time, I whispered. How much? I don't know. More than one night. Okay. He didn't release me. Stay here tonight. Take one of the guest rooms. In the morning, we'll talk more. And if you still want time, I'll give it to you. Just like that? Just like that. His thumb traced my bottom lip, and my breath hitched. But Emma? Yes? You should know that I'm not a patient man. And once I've decided I want something, I don't stop until it's mine. I'm not a thing to be owned. No. His smile was sharp, predatory. You're far more valuable than that. The guest room was larger than my entire apartment. King-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, ensuite bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool, and a walk-in closet that currently held only spare linens and designer luggage. Dante had shown me to the room himself, pointed out where everything was, and then left with a simple, "Sleep well. I'll see you in the morning." Now I stood in the bathroom, staring at my reflection in a mirror framed by soft lighting. The girl looking back seemed familiar but foreign. Same tired eyes, same cheap clothes, but something in her expression had shifted. She looked like someone who'd been offered a fairy tale and couldn't decide if it was a dream or a nightmare. I showered, using products that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill, and the hot water felt like a baptism. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a towel softer than clouds, I found clothes laid out on the bed, silk pajamas in navy blue. My favorite color, just like he'd said, with delicate lace trim. A note rested on top in strong, angular handwriting, "Since you left your starred ones at home." D. He'd noticed. Of course he'd noticed. Dante Moretti noticed everything. I dressed, and the silk felt like sin against my skin. When I climbed into the bed, the mattress seemed to embrace me, and for the first time in years, I felt safe, which was absurd. I was in the home of a man Maria had called dangerous, a man who'd admitted to watching me for weeks, a man who wanted to marry me after 2 conversations. But as I lay there in the darkness, listening to the soft sounds of the penthouse settling around me, I couldn't deny the truth. I'd never felt more protected in my life. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close, and the smell of coffee drifting under the door. For one disoriented moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then, reality crashed back. The proposal, the penthouse, the impossible choice hanging over me. I found my way to the kitchen, following the coffee scent like a lifeline. Dante stood at the counter, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked up when I entered, and his expression softened in a way I suspected few people ever witnessed. "Good morning." "Hi." I felt suddenly shy in the borrowed pajamas. He poured coffee without asking, 2 sugars, just like he'd said, and slid the mug across the marble counter. Did you sleep well? Better than I have in years. The admission slipped out before I could stop it. Good. He leaned against the counter, coffee in hand, watching me with those assessing eyes. We need to talk about practicalities. Practicalities? If you agree to marry me, there are things you need to understand about my life. He set down his cup. My work is dangerous. I have enemies, many of them. You would need constant protection. Your freedom would be limited. Limited how? Guards whenever you leave the penthouse, restricted locations. No contact with certain people from your past. He held my gaze. I know it sounds like prison. It does. But it would keep you alive. No dramatics, no exaggeration. Just cold fact. And in my world, Emma, staying alive is the ultimate luxury. I sipped my coffee, processing. What about my roommates? My job? You'd quit the diner. Your roommates would be compensated for the sudden loss of rent. Any belongings you want would be moved here. He paused. Unless there are people you can't leave behind. My chest tightened. No. No one who'd miss me. Something flickered in his expression, not pity, but understanding. He knew what it was like to be alone, even in a crowd. What about love? I asked quietly. What about it? You're asking me to marry you. Don't you want... shouldn't we at least... Love is a luxury people in my position can't afford. He moved around the counter, stopping just in front of me. But I can offer you something more reliable than love, Emma. Devotion. Protection. Complete and utter commitment to your safety and happiness. That's not the same thing. No. His hand came up, fingers threading through my hair. It's better. Love fades. Passion burns out. But devotion? That's built on choice and fed by action. It lasts. You sound like you've thought about this a lot. I've had 6 years to think about what I want in a partner. His thumb traced my temple, and then you walked into my life and made it simple. How? Because with you, I don't have to pretend. He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. I can be exactly who I am, monster and man, and you look at me like I'm just human. You are human. Most people forget that. His breath ghosted across my lips. But not you. We stood like that, breathing the same air, and I felt the weight of his loneliness pressing against mine. 2 people who'd perfected the art of survival discovering they were tired of merely existing. I need to know something, I whispered. Ask. If I say yes, if I marry you, will you hurt me? His entire body went rigid. Then slowly, he pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. What I saw there made my breath catch. Fury and pain, and something that looked almost like grief. Never. The word came out harsh, absolute. I would burn this entire city to ash before I let anyone, including myself, cause you harm. Do you understand me, Emma? You would be mine to protect, not to damage. Okay. Okay, you understand? Or okay, you'll marry me? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was insane. Reckless, the kind of decision that would alter the entire trajectory of my life. But when I looked at Dante Moretti, this dangerous, controlled, surprisingly gentle man who'd somehow seen past my invisible exterior, I realized I'd already made my choice the moment I stepped into his SUV. Okay, I'll marry you. Everything moved with terrifying speed after that. Within hours, Dante had made calls in rapid Italian, his voice clipped and commanding. People appeared. Lawyers with briefcases, a woman with fabric samples and measuring tape, another with jewelry catalogs. They treated me with careful deference, calling me Miss Emma or Ma'am, while their eyes assessed and calculated my worth in Dante's world. I signed papers I barely understood. Prenuptial agreements that protected assets I couldn't fathom, contracts that made my head spin. A lawyer explained each clause in patient detail, but the words blurred together. All I really understood was that if I left, I'd walk away with nothing, and if I stayed, everything Dante owned would protect me. It's standard, the lawyer assured me, though his expression suggested nothing about this situation was standard at all. Dante sat beside me throughout, his hand resting on my lower back, a constant reminder of his presence, his claim. When I hesitated over certain clauses, his thumb would trace small circles against my spine, grounding me. "You don't have to sign anything you're uncomfortable with," he murmured at one point. "And if I don't? Then we revise until you are comfortable." His eyes held mine. "This is a partnership, Emma, not a dictatorship." I signed everything. The wedding was scheduled for 3 days later. 3 days to transform from invisible waitress to mafia wife. 3 days to second-guess every decision that led me here. The woman with fabric samples, Isabel, she'd introduced herself, returned the next morning with dresses. Not the poofy white confections I'd imagined, but elegant sheaths in ivory and champagne, sophisticated and understated. "Mr. Moretti specified you should feel comfortable," Isabel explained, as she laid them out across the guest room bed. "He said, and I quote, 'She should look like herself, only more so.'" Something about that observation made my throat tight. I tried on 7 dresses before finding the one. Silk charmeuse in pale champagne that skimmed my body without clinging, with delicate straps and a low back that made me feel exposed and powerful simultaneously. When I emerged from the bathroom, Isabel's eyes widened. "That's the one," she breathed. Dante appeared in the doorway. I hadn't heard him approach, but suddenly he was there, filling the space with his presence. His gaze traveled over me slowly, thoroughly, and something dark and possessive flashed in his eyes. "Out," he told Isabel without looking away from me. She gathered her things and vanished with practiced speed. We stood alone in the guest room, me in the wedding dress, him in his perfectly tailored suit, and the air between us felt charged with something I didn't have words for. "You're beautiful," he said quietly. "It's just a dress." "No." He moved closer, stopping just inches away. "It's you. The dress is just fabric. But you—" His hand came up, fingertips grazing my collarbone. "You're going to be my wife." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened me. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my stomach. "Are you having second thoughts?" I asked. "About marrying you." His laugh was dark. "Not even slightly. You?" "Constantly." "Good." His fingers traced the strap of the dress, following it down to where it met the bodice. "If you weren't questioning this, I'd worry about your survival instincts. Maybe my survival instincts are broken. Or maybe they're finally working correctly." He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear. "3 more days, little star, then you're mine completely." That night, I couldn't sleep. The penthouse was quiet, except for the distant hum of the city, and I found myself wandering the halls like a ghost. I discovered Dante's office by accident. The door slightly ajar, light spilling into the darkened corridor. He sat behind a massive desk, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie discarded, reading something on his computer screen with that intense focus I was beginning to recognize. 2 of his guards stood near the windows, and they straightened when they noticed me. Dante's head snapped up immediately. "Emma." Concern flickered across his features. "What's wrong?" I couldn't sleep. He gestured to his guards. "Leave us." They obeyed without question, closing the door behind them. Dante stood, moving around the desk, and I noticed the shoulder holster he wore, the gun a stark reminder of exactly who I was marrying. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the climate control. This is all happening so fast. 3 days ago, I was invisible. Now I'm about to become your wife, and I don't even know what that means in your world. He studied me for a long moment, then took my hand and led me to a leather sofa positioned near the windows. We sat, and he kept hold of my hand, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm. "Ask me anything," he said. "Whatever you need to know." "What exactly do you do?" "I run an organization that controls shipping, real estate, and entertainment venues throughout the city." "Clinical, factual. We also provide protection services." "Protection from what?" "From other organizations who'd like to take what we've built." His jaw tightened. "From authorities who don't understand the difference between necessary violence and cruelty. From chaos." "So you're a criminal?" "By legal definition, yes." No apology in his tone. By my own definition, I'm a man who provides order in a world that would otherwise descend into bloodshed. I should be horrified, should be running for the door. Instead, I asked, "Have you killed people?" His eyes went flat, emotionless. "Yes." "Recently?" "Define recently." "This year." "Yes." The simple honesty was somehow more frightening than any lie would have been. "Does it bother you?" "It used to." He looked down at our joined hands. "Now it's just necessary. Like breathing." "That's terrifying." "I know." He met my gaze again. "Which is why I need you, Emma. You remind me that not everything has to be calculated and controlled. That some things, some people, are worth protecting just because they exist. I'm not special. You are to me." His free hand came up, cupping my cheek. "And in 3 days, you'll be under my protection permanently. No one will touch you. No one will harm you. No one will even look at you wrong without answering to me." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made something in my chest constrict. "That sounds suffocating. It's survival." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "My enemies would use you against me the moment they learned you exist. The only way to keep you safe is to make you so obviously mine that touching you becomes a death sentence. So I'm bait." "No." His voice hardened. "You're my most valuable possession, and I protect what's mine." There was that word again. Mine. Possessive. Absolute. Inescapable. "What if I want out?" I whispered. "A year from now, or 5 years, what if I can't do this anymore?" His expression went carefully blank. "Then we discuss it." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now." He pulled me closer, until I was practically in his lap, his arms wrapping around me with surprising gentleness. "I won't lie to you, Emma. Leaving me would be complicated, dangerous even. But if you were truly miserable, if staying was destroying you, I'd find a way. You promise?" "I promise I'd try." His lips pressed against my temple. "But I'm also promising to make you so happy that leaving becomes the last thing you'd ever want." "That's arrogant. That's determined." He pulled back enough to look at me. "I don't fail at things I commit to, little star. And I'm committing to you." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparations. More papers to sign. More people to meet. Members of Dante's inner circle who assessed me with varying degrees of skepticism and curiosity. His second in command, a man named Marco with scarred hands and cautious eyes, pulled me aside at one point. "You know what you're getting into?" he asked bluntly. "Not really." "Good. Honest answer." He studied me. Dante's been alone a long time, made him hard, cold. But I saw how he looks at you, and I haven't seen that softness in him since. He trailed off. "Just don't break him, yeah? I'm pretty sure he's the one with the power to break me." Marco's smile was grim. "You'd be surprised." I thought about that conversation as I stood in front of the mirror on the morning of the wedding, Isabel making final adjustments to the dress. "You'd be surprised." As if I had some kind of power in this arrangement beyond simply existing as Dante's chosen bride. A knock on the door. Isabel opened it to reveal Dante, dressed in a charcoal suit that made him look like sin personified. His eyes found me in the mirror, and everything else ceased to exist. "You're not supposed to see the bride before the ceremony," Isabel protested weakly. "I don't care about superstitions." He crossed to me, dismissing Isabel with a gesture. When we were alone, he turned me to face him. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified." "Good." His hands settled on my waist. "So am I." "You don't look terrified. I'm excellent at hiding it." His forehead pressed against mine. "But I'm about to stand in front of my entire organization and claim you as mine. And the only thing scarier than that is the thought of you changing your mind. I'm not going to change my mind. Promise?" I looked up at him, this dangerous, powerful man who somehow made me feel seen, and nodded. "Promise." He kissed me then, the first real kiss we'd shared. It started gentle, almost hesitant, as if he was afraid I might shatter. But when I leaned into him, when my hands came up to grip his jacket, something shifted. The kiss deepened, became hungry, claiming a preview of possession to come. When he finally pulled back, We were both breathing hard. 3 hours, he said roughly. Then you're mine. The ceremony took place in the penthouse, transformed into something elegant and intimate. Flowers I couldn't name filled every surface, their scent making the air heavy and sweet. Candles flickered despite the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. And people, so many people, filled the space, all dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses, all watching as I walked toward Dante. He stood at the makeshift altar by the windows, the city sprawling behind him like a kingdom awaiting its queen, Marco beside him as best man. And as I approached, I saw something in Dante's expression I'd never seen before: vulnerability. He was afraid I wouldn't come, but I did. Step by step, in the champagne dress that made me feel like someone else, I walked toward my future. The officiant spoke words I barely heard, something about love and commitment, and joining two souls. But all I could focus on was Dante's hand holding mine, his thumb tracing those familiar circles on my palm, grounding me. "Do you, Emma Rose Bennett, take this man?" "Yes," I interrupted. "I do." A ripple of amusement went through the crowd. The officiant smiled. "Let me finish the question first. Sorry." Heat flooded my cheeks. "But yes, whatever the question is, yes." Dante's smile transformed his entire face, and for one perfect moment he looked young and unguarded and almost happy. "And do you, Dante Alessandro Moretti, take this woman?" "Absolutely." No hesitation. "She's mine." The officiant laughed. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Dante pulled me against him with barely controlled force, and the kiss was nothing like the gentle one from earlier. This was claiming, possessive, a promise and a threat, all at once. When he finally released me, I was dizzy and breathless and irrevocably his. The crowd erupted in applause, but I barely heard it over the pounding of my heart. Dante's lips brushed my ear. "Mine now, little star, forever." And as his arms tightened around me, I realized with startling clarity that I'd never felt more trapped or more free in my entire life. The reception blurred into champagne and congratulations from people whose names I'd never remember. Dante kept me close, his hand possessive on my waist or the small of my back, guiding me through conversations I barely participated in. I was introduced as Mrs. Moretti, again and again, and each time the title felt more surreal. But it wasn't until the guests began departing, until the penthouse emptied and the staff cleaned away evidence of the celebration, that the reality crashed down. I was married, to a man I'd known less than a week, a man who'd just promised forever in front of his entire criminal organization. "You're trembling," Dante observed as we stood alone by the windows, the city lights winking like distant stars. "I'm fine, Emma." He turned me to face him, his hands framing my face. "Don't lie to me. Not now. Not ever." "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of me? Of this? Of what happens next?" My hands twisted in the silk of my dress. "We're married, but we barely know each other. And everyone keeps looking at me like they're waiting for me to fail, to prove I'm not good enough for—" His kiss silenced me. Gentler this time, but no less possessive. "You are more than good enough," he said against my lips. "And anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me. Understand?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Come." He took my hand. "I want to show you something." He led me through the penthouse to a section I hadn't explored, past his office, down a corridor I'd assumed was private. At the end, he opened a door to reveal a bedroom that made the guest room look modest. Everything was in shades of deep blue and silver. My colors, I realized with a start. The bed was enormous, covered in silk that looked like captured moonlight. More floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city, and through an open door, I glimpsed a bathroom that resembled a spa. "This is our room now," Dante said, watching my reaction. "I had it redecorated for you." "When?" "I started making changes the day after we met." He moved to a dresser, opening drawers to reveal clothes, women's clothes, all in my size. "I knew you'd say yes eventually." "That's presumptuous. That's certainty." He turned back to me, I knew the moment I saw you that you belonged here, with me. I should object to his arrogance, should be offended by his assumption. Instead, I found myself asking, what if I'd said no? Then I would have waited. He crossed back to me, backing me slowly toward the bed, and waited. And waited. However long it took for you to realize we're inevitable. My legs hit the mattress. Dante, I'm not going to touch you tonight, he said, reading my panic. Not until you're ready. But we are going to sleep in the same bed, because you're my wife now. And I want you close. Just sleep. Just sleep. His smile was wry. I'm many things, Emma, but I'm not a monster. When I finally make you mine in every way, it'll be because you're begging me for it. Heat flooded my cheeks. I'm not going to beg. We'll see. He kissed my forehead, then stepped back. Get ready for bed. I'll be back in 10 minutes. He left, closing the door behind him, and I stood alone in this beautiful room that was supposed to be mine, our room. The phrase felt foreign and intimate all at once. I changed into another pair of silk pajamas, navy blue again, and washed my face in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. I looked the same. Same tired eyes, same freckles, same ordinary features, but somehow, everything had changed. When Dante returned, he'd removed his jacket and tie, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He moved around the room with easy familiarity, setting his phone on the nightstand, checking the locks on the windows with automatic precision. Force of habit, he explained, catching my curious look. Can't sleep without making sure everything's secure. Even up here? Especially up here. He sat on the edge of the bed, removing his shoes. The higher you climb, the farther you have to fall. I climbed into the other side of the bed, the silk sheets cool against my skin. Dante joined me, and the mattress dipped under his weight. We lay there in the darkness, not touching, both staring at the ceiling. Can I ask you something? I ventured. Always. Why haven't you ever married before? You're 32. You said people expect it. Silence stretched between us. Then, because I was waiting for someone real. Real? Someone who'd see past everything else. Past the money, the power, the reputation. He turned his head to look at me. Someone who'd be terrified and marry me anyway. That's a strange criteria. I'm a strange man. His hand found mine under the covers, fingers interlacing. Sleep, Emma. Tomorrow we start our real life together. I woke to sunlight and the realization that Dante's arm was draped over my waist, pulling me back against his chest. Sometime during the night, we'd gravitated together, and now I was cocooned in his warmth, his breath steady against my neck. For the first time in years, I felt safe. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Dante must have brought it from the guest room. I reached for it carefully, trying not to wake him, but his arm tightened. Check it, he mumbled, voice rough with sleep. Could be important. I unlocked the screen and my heart stopped. 17 missed calls, dozens of text messages, all from the same number I'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Jake, my ex-boyfriend, the man I'd loved with desperate intensity. The man who'd destroyed me so completely, I'd convinced myself I deserved the destruction. I hadn't heard from him since the day I'd found him in our bed with my former best friend, since he'd laughed at my tears and told me I was too boring to keep interested, since I'd packed everything I owned into garbage bags and moved into that moldy apartment with strangers. Dante was suddenly alert, sitting up, his eyes on my face. What's wrong? Nothing. It's just... He took the phone from my trembling hands, read the messages, and his entire expression went cold, dangerous. The man I'd seen hints of but never experienced directly. Who is Jake? His voice was deceptively calm. My ex. The one who hurt you. It wasn't a question. Somehow he already knew. Yes. Dante scrolled through the messages, his jaw tightening with each one. When he finally looked up, his eyes were black ice. He's seen the news about our wedding. Now he wants you back, not a hint of emotion in his tone. He says he made a mistake, that he loves you, that he'll treat you right this time. I don't care what he says, don't you? He handed back the phone. He was your first love. He clearly still has power over you. You're shaking just seeing his name. I'm shaking because I'm angry. The words came out fiercer than I'd intended. He had 3 years to realize he made a mistake. 3 years while I was working myself to death, sleeping in a room with water damage, eating ramen for dinner. And now that I'm married to you, now that I'm finally safe, that's when he decides I'm worth something. Dante's expression shifted, the coldness melting into something warmer. Satisfied. Say that again. What? The part about being safe. He pulled me against him. Say it again. I'm safe now. My voice cracked. Because of you. Yes. His arms tightened around me. You are. And he'll never touch you again. Do you understand? Never. I don't want him to. I just want him to disappear. That can be arranged. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. Dante, I'm joking. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. Mostly. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Jake. I'm coming to see you. We need to talk. Dante took the phone, typed something rapidly, and handed it back. This is Emma's husband. She doesn't want to talk to you. Lose this number, or lose something more valuable. Your choice. You can't just threaten people. I protested weakly. I can. I did. And he'll listen. Dante kissed my temple. No one bothers what's mine, little star. No one. Jake didn't listen. 2 days later, he showed up at the building's entrance. The security team called Dante immediately, and I watched from the penthouse windows as he appeared in the lobby, my ex-boyfriend, looking exactly as I remembered. Handsome in that careless way, dressed in clothes that suggested he'd finally gotten his life together. Too late. Far too late. Dante appeared beside me, phone to his ear, issuing commands in rapid Italian. Stay here, he told me. I want to go down. Emma, please, I looked up at him. I need to do this. I need him to see that I'm not the same girl he destroyed. Dante studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fine. But my terms. My rules. The lobby felt cavernous and cold. Jake stood near the entrance, arguing with security, and he turned when he heard our approach. His eyes widened when he saw me, not in my waitress uniform or cheap clothes, but in the designer dress Dante had bought me, diamonds at my throat, confidence I'd borrowed from my husband's presence. Emma. Jake's voice cracked. Jesus, Emma, you look different, I supplied coolly. That tends to happen when you stop letting trash take up space in your life. His face flushed. I deserved that. I know I did. But please just hear me out. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I've been miserable without you. Good. The word came out sharp. I hope you've been as miserable as I was when I found you fucking my best friend in our bed, when you laughed at me for crying, when you told me I was too boring to keep you interested. I was an idiot. Young and stupid and... No. Dante's voice cut through Jake's excuses like a blade. He'd been silent until now, letting me speak. But his patience had limits. You were cruel. There's a difference. Jake finally seemed to notice Dante, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition, maybe, or fear. You're Dante Moretti, and you're the mistake my wife made before she knew better. Dante moved closer to me, his hand settling possessively on my waist. She's told you she's not interested. The security team told you to leave. I told you what would happen if you persisted. Yet here you are. I just want to talk to her, alone. That's not happening. My voice was steady now, strengthened by Dante's presence. I don't owe you closure, Jake. I don't owe you anything. You had your chance, and you threw it away for someone who wasn't me. She meant nothing, and I meant less. I took a step forward, and Dante let me, though his hand remained on my back. That's what you showed me. That I was so worthless, so forgettable, that you couldn't even be bothered to hide your betrayal. You wanted me to find you. You wanted me to know I wasn't enough. That's not true. It doesn't matter if it's true. I was surprised by how calm I felt. What matters is that I spent 3 years believing it, 3 years thinking I was the problem, that I needed to be prettier, more exciting, more everything. And then I met someone who looked at me like I was already enough, like I was more than enough, like I was everything. I glanced back at Dante. and his expression made my breath catch. Pride, possession, and something deeper. Something that looked almost like love. "So thank you," I continued, turning back to Jake. "Thank you for being cruel. Thank you for destroying me, because if you hadn't, I never would have become someone who deserved a man like Dante Moretti." Jake's face crumpled. "Emma, please, leave." Dante's voice was quiet but absolute. "Now, while you still can." The security team moved forward, and Jake had no choice but to retreat. I watched him go, this man who'd once held my entire heart and felt nothing. No pain, no regret, no longing. Just relief that he was finally, truly out of my life. When the lobby doors closed behind him, I sagged against Dante. "I'm proud of you," he murmured into my hair. "I thought I'd feel different, more satisfied or something. Revenge is overrated." He turned me to face him. "But freedom? That's priceless." Weeks passed, then months, and slowly, impossibly, the penthouse became home. I learned Dante's routines, the way he checked locks before bed, the 3 phones he carried for different purposes, the nightmares that woke him at 3 a.m. I learned that beneath the dangerous exterior lived a man who remembered how I took my coffee, who left notes on my pillow when he had to leave early, who called me in the middle of meetings just to hear my voice. I learned his world too, the careful politics of his organization, the lines between necessary violence and cruelty, the way power and fear intertwined. Marco became a friend, teaching me self-defense and sharing stories about Dante's past. The other wives, yes, there were others married to men in the organization, slowly accepted me, though I'd never fully be one of them, and I learned myself. The Emma who'd been invisible, who'd believed she was worth nothing, began to fade. In her place grew someone stronger, someone who could stand beside Dante Moretti and not disappear in his shadow. "You're different," he observed one night, as we lay tangled together in bed, months of careful courtship having finally led to the inevitable. His fingers traced patterns on my bare shoulder, and I was still breathless from the way he'd claimed me, possessive and gentle in equal measure. "How so?" "You don't flinch anymore when I touch you. You don't apologize for taking up space. You look me in the eye when you disagree with me." He smiled. "You've become dangerous, little star." I learned from the best. No. He pulled me closer. "You were always dangerous. You just didn't know it yet." A year after our wedding, Dante came home with blood on his knuckles and exhaustion in his eyes. I didn't ask questions, had learned by then that some things were better left unspoken. Instead, I cleaned his hands while he sat silent on our bathroom counter, and when I finished, I kissed each scarred knuckle. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly. "You're probably right." I looked up at him. "But you have me anyway." "Forever?" "Forever." I hesitated, then placed his hand on my still flat stomach. "And soon, it'll be the 3 of us." His eyes widened. "You're pregnant. 6 weeks." I held my breath, waiting for his reaction. Dante slid off the counter, dropping to his knees before me, his hands covering mine where they rested on my stomach. "A baby. Are you happy?" "Happy?" He looked up at me, and tears gleamed in those black ice eyes for the first time since I'd known him. "Emma, I haven't been truly happy in 6 years. Not until you. And now..." His voice broke. "Now you're giving me everything I never thought I'd have." He pressed his forehead against my stomach, and I felt his shoulders shake with silent sobs. This dangerous, controlled man falling apart at the promise of new life. "I'm terrified," he admitted against my skin. "Me too. What if I fail? What if I can't protect you both? What if, then we'll figure it out together." I ran my fingers through his hair. "That's what we do, remember? We face impossible things and survive them." He looked up at me, tears still tracking down his face, and smiled. "Together. Together." 7 months later, I lay in a private hospital room, exhausted and exhilarated, holding our daughter. She was perfect. Dark hair like her father, but my eyes, blue-gray like morning fog. Dante sat beside the bed, unable to look away from her tiny face. "She's so small," he whispered, terrified to hold her. She's perfect. I guided his arms around her, watched his entire body tense with the fear of causing harm. But when she yawned and snuggled against his chest, something in him cracked open. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "I'm your father, and I promise I'll spend every day of my life making sure you know you're loved, that you're wanted, that you're worth everything." "What should we name her?" I asked. He thought for a moment, then smiled. "Stella, Italian for star. Stella Moretti." I tested the name. "It's perfect. Like her mother." He looked at me, and in his eyes, I finally saw it. The thing he'd claimed couldn't exist in his world. Love. Pure, absolute, all-consuming love. "Thank you, Emma, for saving me, for giving me this, for being brave enough to marry a monster and see the man underneath. You were never a monster to me." I reached for his free hand, squeezing gently. "You were just the first person who saw me. And now we see each other." He leaned over, kissing me softly while our daughter slept between us. "Forever, little star. Forever." I agreed. And as I lay there in that hospital room, holding proof of the impossible life I'd built with this dangerous, devoted man, I realized something. I'd spent years being invisible, thinking that was safety. But I was wrong. True safety wasn't invisibility. It was being seen completely, flaws and fears and failings, and loved anyway. It was finding someone who'd burn the world to keep you warm. It was choosing to leap off a cliff because you trusted someone would catch you. And Dante Moretti had caught me, held me, and transformed my free fall into flight. 3 years ago, I was a ghost in a stained apron, surviving on scraps and prayers. Now, I was a wife, a mother, a woman who'd learned her own worth through the eyes of a man who saw value where others saw nothing. Jake had called me boring, invisible, not worth keeping. But Dante had called me essential. And in the end, that made all the difference. Final. The morning sun streamed through the hospital windows, painting everything gold. Dante had finally dozed off in the chair beside my bed, our daughter still cradled protectively against his chest. I watched them. This man who held the city in his iron grip, rendered completely vulnerable by 7 pounds of helpless humanity, and felt my heart expand with a fullness I'd never imagined possible. My phone buzzed quietly. A message from Maria at the diner. "Heard the news. Congratulations, honey. I always knew you were destined for more than refilling coffee cups." I smiled, typing back, "Thank you. For everything." Because she had helped, in her way. By being kind when kindness was rare. By giving Dante my number without question, somehow recognizing that he was exactly what I needed even when I didn't know it myself. Dante stirred, his eyes opening slowly. "What are you smiling about?" "Everything." I gestured at the 3 of us, this impossible family we'd created from chance and choice and stubborn determination. This, us, the fact that I'm not invisible anymore. "You were never invisible, little star." He stood carefully, placing Stella in her bassinet before climbing into the hospital bed beside me, pulling me against his side. "You just needed someone to turn on the lights." We lay there in comfortable silence, watching our daughter sleep, and I thought about the girl I'd been, exhausted, alone, convinced her life would never amount to anything more than doubled shifts and cheap coffee. She'd been wrong, because sometimes salvation came in unexpected packages. Sometimes it wore expensive suits and carried guns and offered you a deal that seemed too good to be true. And sometimes, when you were brave enough to accept impossible offers from dangerous men, you discovered that the cliff you'd jumped from wasn't a fall at all. It was the beginning of flying. "I love you," I whispered against Dante's chest. His arms tightened around me. "I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anything. Even more than your organization?" "Infinitely more." He kissed my hair. "You and Stella are my real empire, Emma. Everything else is just noise." Outside the window, the city woke to another day. Millions of people starting their routines, chasing their dreams, surviving their struggles. Somewhere out there, another girl might be working in a diner, invisible and exhausted, convinced her life had already peaked, but maybe, just maybe, someone would walk through that door and see her, really see her, and offer her a hand up instead of holding her down. That's what I hoped for anyway. That's what I'd learned from my impossible fairy tale. That being seen was worth the risk. That love could exist even in darkness. That sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the most necessary. And that happy endings weren't reserved for princesses in towers or girls who'd done everything right. Sometimes they belonged to waitresses who said yes to mafia bosses, to women who chose uncertain futures over comfortable misery, to survivors who'd learned that safety wasn't found in invisibility, but in being claimed so completely that the entire world had to acknowledge you existed. I was Emma Moretti now, wife, mother, most valuable possession of the most dangerous man in the city. And for the first time in my entire life, I was exactly where I belonged.